Welcome everybody to the Lit Up Instagram show, bringing you fun and soulful interviews with spiritual teachers with the aim of tuning you in and lighting you up. This is the live version of the Lit Up Lightworker podcast, which is available on Spotify, on iTunes, on Stitcher, and TuneIn. I have here with me Sean Patrick, who is an author, speaker, and spiritual business owner. He's the founder of That Guy's House Publishing, the creator of the meditation movement Chill the F Out, and co-founder of the upcoming Mind, Body, Soul dance class, Flotation. Sean is also a researcher in positive psychology and has been featured on BBC News, the Sunday Times, the Huffington Post, and the Daily Express. Sean, it's such a pleasure to have you here with me today.
It is so awesome chatting with you. As you mentioned, we are friends, and this is honestly just a pleasure and a joy for me.
Indeed. So let me, speaking of that, let's go back. A few years ago, I think it must have been 5 years ago when we first started.
Oh, we're going to age ourselves, George, but yes, it was 5 years ago.
I think it was 5 years ago. We were both starting our spiritual business. So I'm very curious to know, what has been your journey to starting up as a life coach, and then writing your book, That Guy Who Loves the Universe, and then eventually being the founder of That Guy's House Publishing. What has been the journey to founding this?
So it's been a wonderful, incredible journey, one that I could not predict in any way, but it actually started, I guess, with my background in theatre. I went to drama school. And my focus became, as it was time to graduate, I began producing theatre for mental health. I was working with community groups to put on shows and performances about happiness and self-esteem and spirituality. And that became just my main interest. And not long after that, I had set up a, having gone through my own transformation, my own spiritual awakening, which is forever ongoing. I set up a blog that was on Facebook, and it still is, but it was really my introduction to the world. And it was called That Guy Who Loves the Universe. And I just absolutely loved being on there, posting it, growing an audience, sharing my philosophical and spiritual kind of way around life. And I was then back and forth with a few publishing houses about doing a book after the blog. And after being back and forth a couple times and nothing quite coming to a publishing deal, I ended up setting up my own imprint, which called after the blog, That Guy Who Loves the Universe. The publishing imprint was called That Guy's House. I published my book through it only with the intention that it would exist just to publish my book. And in the universe having better plans than we do all the time. Before I knew it, it became this publishing house, and we had a handful of authors, working under us. Now, just 18 months later, we're fully fledged. We have some fantastic authors working underneath us, and it's fantastic. It's been an extreme example of the universe having a better plan than I did.
Yeah, and you just prove to the whole world that when you love the universe loves you back. Definitely.
Oh, it so does. I love life and life loves me. That is an affirmation I cherish. I love the universe and the universe loves me.
That's an amazing story, and I am so glad to see all the books that are coming out with That Guy's House. Right now we have Emma Mumford with us, whose book just came out, The Spiritual Queen.
Woohoo! And she is incredible.
Yes. Another friend of ours, Katie Brookhurst, had her book published with you as well. So I want to take a step back and go into traditional publishing, because I come from a traditional publisher background, having worked in London for 3 years. And so I kept getting questions all the time from people who, it was very clear to me, didn't understand how the publishing industry worked. So let's just break things down for everybody so that people understand what their options are with regards to publishing their spiritual book, and how That Guy's House is different, how the model you bring forth is different. Could you give us an introduction in basic steps of how the traditional publishing world works?
Absolutely. And just to preface this whole conversation by saying both options are wonderful. If you're looking at traditional publishing or self-publishing, so many pros to each. And it's very much all a fantastic spiritual medium for sharing your voice and sharing inspiration with the world. So I was very much wanting a traditional publishing deal. I had a literary agent, I had a book proposal, and I was shopping it around publishers, as people say. And I really wanted a traditional publishing deal because I knew a lot of what that could offer. It was having the backing of a publishing company. It was knowing my book would be worldwide distributed. It was having that almost seal of approval from somebody else that my book was good enough. And also there's the very real, with a traditional publishing house, oftentimes an author will receive an advance in cash. And there's some, it's very important you get, you get the chunk of money up front for your book. All these things played in, but most importantly for me, I was on the outside looking in at traditional publishing houses, wanting to belong to a community and family of authors. And that is the reason why I never straight away went to looking at self-publishing, because I wanted to belong to a home, to a house, to a family of authors. And that was my main drive in wanting to belong to a publishing house. And I'm sure you can speak to that too, based on your experience. Is everything I've said correct?
Yes,
I want to make...
absolutely.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so as Sean just mentioned, traditional publishing, they give you an advance, you're presenting a book proposal, and then it goes through several stages until it eventually gets published into the world. And it's a process that it can take a year, it can even take more than a year. Then we have the self-publishing option. How is that different, Sean? How does self-publishing work differently from traditional publishing?
So with self-publishing, especially if you're going at it completely alone, you're not needing approval, or you're not needing anything from anybody else besides from your own ability to write a book. And for a lot of people, that is extremely freeing, especially because you're going to get creative freedom over your title. And I've never published traditionally, but knowing people that have, there are compromises that have had to be made along the way. There are decisions that have had to be made based on how this book fits into that publishing house's list the best. And that's all fantastic. But when you're self-publishing, you're not going to have to worry about that. So with self-publishing, you can just go ahead, get your manuscript sorted and go at it yourself. To discuss what I do with that guy's house is, I like to think of myself somewhere as a hybrid, as a bit of a boutique publishing house, because we're very much self-publishing. Authors that come to us, it's the similar model to self-publishing, but like I said, because I was on the outside looking in at traditional publishing, I very much recreated the model that I saw, and that was that we take care of, the proofreading, we take care of the cover design, we take care of the distribution, we take care of the ISBN. All this could sound like foreign language to people, and we'll clear everything up. But if you're completely alone self-publishing, there are things you have to consider. You have to have your book file professionally drawn up. You have to require an ISBN. You have to look at what distribution channels you're going to be going into. So when it comes to self-publishing, there is a lot to consider. All can be completely done. I really want to say this to people. It is all very achievable if you want to go at it completely alone. And there's also other services in place which can help you along the way. And also, I think the biggest difference when it comes to self-publishing versus traditional publishing that is a draw to people on the pro of the self-publishing side is how many royalties an author is getting per book. Now, I know with my publishing company, authors are walking away with 100% of their cleared royalties. I can't speak to other publishing services, but I know that with a publishing house, that's not how it works. Authors are walking away with possibly maybe 10 to 15% a book, maybe even less. Whereas authors from my publishing company, they're walking away with £3 to £4 per book they sell, which is more than a traditional publishing deal. So that is a big difference, is how much authors are making per book.
I think what you've created, Sean, is just so powerful, because you strike the perfect balance between the goods that comes from traditional publishing and the goods that come from self-publishing.
Oh, absolutely. And that is still what I wanted to do, like I said. And even now, as the company's grown, I find myself at business conferences and in conversations with business coaches that say, leverage this, accept anything and everything. And I'm very clear that I'm growing a hub of spiritual authors who are the real deal. They have And that's another thing as well. That's, you know, we do have an accept reject process. We want great authors who are high vibing, who are, you know, spiritually connected, who have this great, authentic, real message. So, yeah, so I definitely stand somewhere in the middle where it's not a we publish anything situation, but once you become one of our authors, we'll take care of it. We'll take care of the rest for you the way a traditional publisher would. So yeah, it's somewhere in the middle with both of the good things. I really love it. It's been a huge blessing, and I just love watching how this company has grown.
The reason I love this so much is because I worked for a traditional publisher, yet I self-published my own book. So I got to experience both sides. So from the traditional publisher side, I can see the benefit of like
Absolutely.
having a publisher support you and distributing the book worldwide and having a community to work with. However, there are the drawbacks of there are so many factors involved, so many people involved that have an opinion about your book. There are so many barriers to entry because you need to have a platform, you need to have certain standards in order to get in. Then from the self-publishing perspective, I gotta tell you, I don't know about your experience, but self-publishing my book has been the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I had been working for it for 3 years before I was able to publish it, because I had to find an editor to edit, and I had to find a designer. I had to decide how I wanted the book to be and feel like and look like, and then putting it together, and then margins, and then deciding on a price, and ISBN, blah, 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 blah. So you're basically taking all that away from people so that people don't have to deal with that.
Absolutely. And George, because you worked in a publishing house, you knew about all of that. I can speak from my experience of when I first did my book. Even though I'd set up the imprint, the ISBN, the actual creation of the book is such a huge part. And for authors to receive their book and hold it in their hand, it needs to have that professional look and feel. And I know, and I'm not ashamed to talk about it now because it's been a while, but when I first did my book, I did not think it had the professional look and feel. I feel like I'd chosen a size that was too big. I feel like the interior file, I didn't choose the right font. All these things that weren't even considerations to me all presented themselves because I was trying to do it alone. Like I said, wonderfully through developing a team, through having the correct soft. Like there is so much to think about when it comes to the creation of a book, and the wrong perception is I'll write a manuscript and upload it to Amazon. There is at least 20 steps in between that part. And you're right, even about margins, and it's so crazy, just to give one example of things that people don't think about. When you think about holding a book and when you open a book, the margin on the left-hand side has to be wider than the margin on the right-hand side.
Yes.
So that's where the page fold is. Who would know that? Well, I mean, people, like I said, through the designers I hire and stuff, they know that. That was not even something I thought about. And there was so many things. And for so many people who are looking at doing their book, if you are going to do it alone, yes, you can. There are a lot of considerations to have the best book possible. Let's talk about having a book. A book will sell copies. A book will bring in money. There's no doubt about that. But most importantly, what you can do through having a book is huge, and that's why you really want the best book possible.
Oh, yes, amen to that, Sean. Because yes, the pain is real, and
the pain is real. The struggle is real. Yeah.
People can do it. We can all do it, but it's a lot of work, and it's so great that you give people the opportunity to take that away so they can really focus on what really matters to them, which is their creation, which is putting all the love into that book.
Absolutely. And first thing to say is your book was gorgeous from the get-go, just so you know, FYI.
Thank you.
Yeah. Secondly,
I loved your book as well, by the way. I read it and I loved it.
Thank you so much. There's a second edition now. I finally, I faced that pain of not being happy with the first one, and with the infrastructure of the publishing company, released a second edition in December. But yeah, to speak about that, creative freedom is so important. And I know I had worked with editors on, even though I was self-publishing my first book, I had worked with editors, and they had changed so much of my voice, and they changed the tone, that I became and I am a huge advocate for authors writing their real, raw and authentic message. Because I really believe that people are buying a book because they see it and they go, oh my gosh, that was written for me. way more so than if it flows well on page 250. You know what I mean? So editing is important, don't get me wrong, but I'm more focused on an author who is vulnerable enough to share a real, raw and authentic message. And I'm not saying it has to be dark, I'm not saying it has to be revolutionary, but someone who's really ready to open up and share their story along with the inspiration that comes with that. That's my excitement for a book with That Guy's House. It's something that is uncensored. And with some publishers and not with others, I can't really speak to it because I've never been traditionally published. Sometimes censorship comes in, and sometimes authors feel as if they didn't get to write the book they wanted. And that is something I am like, absolutely not. The author will get final say. Once I've made the decision that you're someone that I trust to work with and I know you're going to produce good work, that also means that I'm going to trust you to make the final say over your book. And that is just to give people what I didn't have is just a life force. It makes me feel so joy-filled.
Would you say that is the vision behind That Guy's House, to this raw authenticity that the authors bring forth?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's about not being formulaic as well. It's about showing up with that real raw message that might not fit into a formula, but still gives inspiration. And I'll speak to this. My favorite book ever, complete cliche, I ain't scared to say, is Eat, Pray, Love. And I'd call that my favorite spiritual book, though it's a memoir. But I got so much information and insight in how to meditate from the author, Liz Gilbert, sharing her story. And that is really where I stand. I say, I believe that people are going to get more from you through you sharing your true, authentic story than they're going to get by you creating a step process by itself. I think a step process is wonderful when it fits into where it's coming from.
I think you've touched on something really important, which are the formulas we use to market, to write books, to create anything in this world. And this is a discussion that I have a lot with Katie Brookhurst, the author of Social Media for a New Age. Katie's all about raw authenticity. I like my formulas, so sometimes we're like having discussions. Is it a formula? Is it a freedom? What's the balance between the two? So is there a balance between the two? What is your stance on that?
Oh, absolutely. I'd say the balance I find between the two is making sure a book is split up into chapters. There's takeaway from each lesson or life story, and where and when necessary or possible, an actual practical spiritual exercise or self-help exercise is given. That's as far as I go in regards to there being a balance between the two. And I'm very much open to how it could even be more not how it can be more formulaic, that's wrong. I'm open to implementing from the formula more and more. It exists for a reason, it works for a reason, and it's wonderful. But also it's important to leave room for alchemy and miracles. And I think that is that can happen in a formula, and it can also happen through not flowing structure. And there's just so many incredibly selling books or things that just took off, things that caught the zeitgeist of the international population through no rhyme, reason or formula. And that's something for people to really hold close to their heart is through being authentic here, I completely open myself up to that fluke miracle that may occur.
Ooh, that's so good. Now let's talk about that a little bit more and what it takes to write a good spiritual book. So what is That Guy's House looking for in a spiritual book?
So what That Guy's House is looking for in a spiritual book is, like I said, an author who's willing to share their story real and raw. I'm not saying you've had to have had an extremely tragic or dramatic life. I'm just asking that you can be honest. Because if you arrived at a feeling of I'm not good enough or I'm not worthy, that feels the same no matter where it came from. And, you know, there are people who live very luxurious and lovely lives who can really relate to, wow, I still have this feeling of not being good enough. So I'm looking for authors who are being honest about how they feel and to share their story. And that doesn't mean they have to have had a huge, dramatic, dark past. It just means they're willing to be honest. Secondly, it's work to write a book. And I know you can vouch for this. Writing a book is not something that you do over a couple weeks in an afternoon or as a casual project. It is focused, it is dedication, it is rereading, it is committing to submitting drafts, and it's not a side project. And that's why I really encourage authors to write a book that they love, because it's going to require their pound of flesh, and not in a hard way like, I'm sacrificing myself. It's going to require your time, attention, and passion. And you can only keep that up for a book you're genuinely in love with. So you want to be writing a book that you love, and you want to be willing to do the work. And patience is a huge thing. And I know with that guy's house, especially earlier on, we had some authors, who they wanted to publish quickly. They wanted the book out ASAP. And it was a big lesson for me early on, is in order for the book to have maximum distribution, that takes time, that takes effort, that takes energy, and it's allowing for that time frame. And one more thing in regards to that is launching a book is not a one-time gig. Many people do their launch day, do their launch week. I wrote a book, isn't it fantastic? And then they possibly let it fall by the wayside. Oh no, your book is your calling card, your book is your baby for at least 2 years. I'm not saying you can't write another book in that time, but trust me, what you've written in that book is going to be relevant for at least the next 2 years. So you can be sharing your message from the book. You can be using that to get speaking gigs. You can be using that to appear on podcasts and radio shows. You can be using that to launch programs, just with that content you've created in your book. So don't allow it to be a flash in the pan, if that's the phrase. Allow it to be a 2-year bonfire of this wonderful work you've created, because who's to say that after 18 months you don't write an article about something that you write about in the book, which references the book, that goes viral 18 months down the line. But if you've kind of written your book and you're like, okay, I'm done with that now, I sold a couple 100 copies and I'm moving on, once again, be open to that miracle, fluke magic that might occur. And that includes just be behind your book more than its launch week. That saying, dog is for life, not just for Christmas. A book is for life, not just for launch week. I just made that up.
100%. Like our book is like a business card in these days, where that's how you present yourself in the world. And I think there are 2 approaches people can take with publishing a book. It's either you have a platform that leads you to writing a book and selling the book, or you write a book to have a platform. Like it gives you the opportunity to put yourself out there, to get on podcasts, to write articles, and therefore develop your platform, so you can move to another stage at some point.
Absolutely. And I can only speak to, given my experience, the bizarre magic, I'll use that word, that goes on in the world through having a book. Like, I will say, I really love my book, especially now. But as I mentioned to you, I was not thrilled with my first edition, yet it still led to me being interviewed on BBC World News. It still led to me to get countless press and opportunities because I talked about a topic that was, in the media at the time. So the bizarre magic that can happen through having your book is one day you're going to get a message from somebody who sat in Australia or India or Japan. Oh my God, reading your book and I love it. Or for example, one of our authors had the Navy SEALs start to practice the principles of their book because somebody in the Navy SEALs happened to read it. The things that can happen through having a book it's such an example of you being the tap, not the water. Where that water goes and the message and the opportunities and the possibilities, it really is limitless. And like you said, the book is the catalyst to that. And it's almost like, your book is your baby. Don't put pressure on your baby to do everything. Allow, what good can that bring? So I've got invited to do the speaking gig, or I'm going to do this press appearance. Oh, I'm thinking, it's just so, it's like it's magic how, especially in this industry of spirituality and self-help, the opportunities that will find you based on the fact you have collected a body of knowledge and published it is incredible.
Exactly. Giving our book time to grow and really learn to expand. And
absolutely.
I want to talk a little bit about the trends, the spiritual trends, because in the publishing world, and in spirituality as well, there are different trends. Like for a few years, the divine feminine was a big thing. It's still a big thing. And then you move into mindfulness and meditation and manifestation. Do you look for trends in spirituality, or are you solely focusing on stories?
No, I don't look for trends. I am solely focused on stories, but I will say, having a psychology background and being very active in that field of mental health, I guess I am somewhat biased towards a mindful movement. But that's not exclusive criteria for our books. And just looking at our catalog, you'll see we play into a lot of spiritual genres. But what I will say is, on that topic of trend, what I'm noticing in my life and with a lot of people that I see, we are just really having a great time going back to spiritual basics. That is something that's so wonderful, because the trend at one point, and I'm thinking now, like I'm going way back to like 2009, 10 years ago, everything was about the next step, the deeper level, what's the next key. Whereas we've lived life now for, you know, another decade since, and we're realizing the basics work. Like recently, I just got so back into Louise Hay teachings, mirror work, self-love, affirmations, and on the topic of trend, for a long time we wanted to move on to the next step, the deeper level, when actually it's, you know, our spiritual consciousness is a decision away. So
and I love that about spirituality, that we're realizing that the really basic foundations of spirituality is really all we need to find connection to source.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that in my personal life, you know, that's been a return to basic practice. And and on the topic of trends, I believe we are really, really going into that now. It's what works. Just talking about, you know, manifestation, that almost became a dirty word for a while, but actually it's a principle in the universe, and people are understanding that again. The Secret, which was such a huge catalyst for so many people, 2006, I think it was. You know, for a while that became The Secret. Oh, you're still at the level of The Secret. Well, you know, it's not about being at different levels. It's about applying the principles that work. And I really, you know, my intention is that we all continue to realize that. And I think we are. I think back to basics, I think, is the current or next trend.
So someone listening right now who is interested in publishing their book with That Guy's House, how do they go about in finding out more information?
Wonderful. So they can go to thatguyshouse.com, and we have information on there on the books we've published, our packages, the options around publishing. Like I said, we operate as close to being a traditional publisher as possible. So as well as having packages, we also work with authors on a royalty split basis. So for all the information, head to the website. Anyone listening to this can email me directly. It's Sean, spelled SEAN, Sean@thatguyshouse.com. And I'm happy to speak with anybody over email or jump on a call to discuss their book. And if people just want feedback on their manuscript, reach out to me as well. It's a joy to read people's work.
Oh, that's amazing. Like nobody else does that, Sean. That's amazing.
Yeah, well, people tell me this. It's so funny. We recently signed a new author over in Los Angeles. And I said, send me your manuscript. I'll make it my Christmas read. And she was like, well, how much? And I was like, oh no, send me your manuscript. I'd like to read it. And she just like, that was on a different planet to her. But yeah, I am. Yeah.
That's amazing. So everybody joining us live, thank you so much for staying in with us and absorbing all this information. I hope you have your ideas ready to write your book in 2019.
Yes.
Sean, it's been such a pleasure chatting to you. Thank you so much for sharing what you have created here in the world. I think it's so amazing, and I'm so excited. I already have a few of That Guy's House books, and I'm so excited to see what's coming up in the new year as well.
Thank you so much, and I will, from now on, I'll always send you our books. It's been a pleasure to be on with you. Like I said, we've been friends for a while. This has been a joy. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Sean. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.